Yes, hello everyone. Fáilte Goody Cúilín Media. Welcome back to another show here on Cúilín Media. It is episode 7. Myself and Matthew, we were on hiatus for one episode, but we have now returned and we're joined by Aaron, and Liam will be joining us as well, hopefully at some point of the show. Lads, it's been a busy week. Lots of stories about the GAA. Matthew, I don't know if anything stood out to you as a Cork man. Aaron, I'll come to you first. Aaron, how are we feeling?
Yeah, good lads. Good to be back on chatting about this weekend's games. And yeah, obviously been quiet week, no retirements, no All-Star nominations or anything like that. But now in all seriousness, yeah, now looking forward to getting into it. All-Stars announced, obviously some big club games as well this weekend as well. It feels like it's heating up a bit now, kind of getting into the knockouts. You know, I would say the majority of the championships, obviously a few of them are still in groups, but yeah, now we're looking forward to getting into it.
Absolutely. On top of Matthew, I'll jump to you, and I'll jump to you with the question. Peter here has fired in the question. He said, Matthew, did you hear any story about the county board not posting a tribute for Hoggy?
Didn't hear any story about that, to be honest with you. But look, the Cork County Board and the fans, there's been kind of I would say a fractured relationship over the last few months and things like that. But look, they made a statement at the end. They made a statement about Hoggy. They made a statement about Pat Ryan as well. Maybe the county board were just coming up with the words to say about these public figures in many ways. Because if you put out a statement and do it without thinking, then you could say something that would rile up the fans even more. So maybe the county board are kind of thinking that way. We're gonna lay this out. We're gonna lay it out properly and just do it their way. But look, I think the way Hoggy retires, whether you think it's the right decision or not, it is the right way for a player to go on his own terms, on his own Instagram page. He announced it, and that was that. But look, we'll talk about it more in a sec now. But look, it's I'd say it's upsetting news for many people in Cork. Some people may understand why he has gone, but me, for one, I still think Hoggy had a lot more to give. But look, he said it on RT News to Marty Morrissey. He has a family to think about. He's working long hours with Dulux Paints as well. Look, he has a life outside sport as well. He has his family. So look, it's his own decision. He's 37 years of age, and just wishing the best of luck, obviously.
Absolutely. Liam joins us now. Liam, good to have you on the pod. Filling out, we have a full house once again. Isn't that wonderful to see? And now I'm going to pop the names back up there now. So, Liam, we were just discussing there, just the obvious story, and I'm just going to jump right into it. Matthew, I'm going to hand you the floor for this part. Obviously, Patrick Horgan announcing his retirement from inter-county hurling. I mean, one of the all-time greats. There is no question about it, but just going to pass the floor over to you, man. As a Cork man, what do you want to say about Hoggy, his retirement, his legacy?
He was just an incredible hurler, really. Ever since 2008, when he got his first champion, well, you have to say he got his first championship point. I'm doing a bit of research on how many points and goals he got against each county and in every season. Things that it may not add up particularly, but all that will be posted hopefully in the next few days. He actually got his first championship point against Dublin in 2008. Believe it or not. So,
very good.
And as well as that, he got his first championship goal in 2009 against Offaly. So yeah.
So we all are.
All the boys catching strays. But there's no question about it, Matthew. Absolute icon of the modern game.
He was, yeah, in fairness. And when you look at his scoring record across his entire career, 32 goals, 683 points, current championship top scorer. Absolutely incredible for Cork down through the years as well. And he was the one player, you would say, out of many, if he stood over a free, maybe near enough to the penalty kind of area with the whole, nearly the whole defence back in the goal, he's going to find a way for the Slayer to hit the back of the net. Many people think Anthony Nash is the kind of man for that. But I've looked through Hoggy's kind of His record in free taking in close situations and things like that when Cork were way down. He scored a goal from free against Limerick this year. I know they got hammered, but that was one example. He did one against SARS in the club championship. He did one against Middleton last weekend, actually, in the club championship. He did one against Clare. I remember I was at that game in Semple Stadium in 2014 where Clare had a lot of men on the line, but Hoggy still found a way through. He had this kind of knack for coming up with clutch moments in clutch situations. Like, he was an absolutely incredible hurler for his club, for his county as well. Like, the performances that really spring to mind in his career, the one where he announced himself to the country, I remember in 2010 against Tipperary in Páirc Uí Chaoimh in the first round of Munster. He tore the tip defence. That was a tip defence that went on and won the All-Ireland that year in 2010. The likes of Paddy Stapleton, back there, Brendan Cummins in goal. That defence got torn apart by Hoggy that day. Hoggy scored 2 goals and 2 points. He was absolutely outstanding in that day, I remember. And I remember even later on down the track in 2019, the game against Kilkenny, which Cork inevitably lost, obviously, in Croke Park. He scores 3 goals and 10 points. He just casually scores a goal on his knees down at the canal end. Like, I remember that. That was an absolutely incredible finish. And he was just an incredible hurler and just a great role model for kids. Great role model for Cork hurling supporters as well. I think the most memorable goal, and it's I know a lot of people talk about recency bias, but the most memorable goal for me was when he shook the Blackrock end against Limerick in the Munster Senior Hurling Championship. Cork, I know a lot of people talk about Shane Kingston winning the penalty, and fair play to him for that. He drew the foul from Kyle Hayes. But Hoggy still had to step up and convert that penalty. I think our good friend Dan Casey actually interviewed Pat Ryan on Joe.ie after that game, and he asked him about Hoggy. Did you have any confidence in Hoggy taking that penalty and striking past Nicky Quaid? And Pat Ryan said, "Oh no, I knew he was going to score." Like it was that kind of confidence he gave to a manager, which encapsulated Patrick Horgan as a player. And I think in the Southern Star this week, Tom Lyons wrote a brilliant tribute to him, and he said that a lot of people are known by a name in hurling circles or whatever. Whether Dermot O'Sullivan is known as The Rock, Patrick Marr is known as Bonner Marr, Henry Shefflin, known as one of the greatest hurlers of all time. Hoggy was known as Hoggy. Nobody else was known as Hoggy. That was his name. And that's probably the best compliment I could give to Patrick Horgan. Nobody knew Hoggy as anybody else but him. And he was just an incredible kind of a hurler. And it was just coincidental that you had Christy Ring coming from Glen Rovers. Well, he came from Cúilín initially, but did play for Glen Rovers. But Christy Ring was encapsulated in that club. And for Hoggy to encapsulate himself into that club as well, I wouldn't be shocked now if a statue is built down at Glen Rovers GA in the next few years of Hoggy. Like, he was that kind of public figure. He was absolutely incredible as well. And he was great at just knowing the game as well. I remember actually before the All-Ireland final against Clare, again, Cork lost after extra time that day in 2024, but he gave an interview to John Logue Cusack, and John Logue asked him what he loves about hurling, and Hoggy was just mentioning the small little details, the cut grass, the touch of the hurl, just carrying the hurl around with him every time. Exactly. I think that's what Hoggy was known for as well, just carrying the hurl around with him everywhere as well. And there was brilliant tributes obviously given to him over the last few days, especially from his manager Tomas Mulcahy with Glen Rovers as well, who was a legend himself with the Glen, obviously winning All-Ireland in 1990. And a lot of people will point towards, he hasn't won an All-Ireland, he hasn't won Hurler of the Year. At least you talk about the Mayo players not winning an All-Ireland, but at least Lee Keegan and Andy Moore won Footballer of the Year awards. Hoggy never won a Hurler of the Year, which is absolutely astonishing, considering the ilk of player he was. And yeah, it's kind of a shame when you look at it that way, that he didn't get his All-Ireland in the end. And that, this week in particular, that made me upset about that All-Ireland final even more in July, because Hoggy deserved it All-Ireland. It's as simple as that. I was disappointed, not just for the Cork team, not just for the fans, not just for the fans that got ridiculed, I would say, online for the stuff they were saying outside the stadium, like the batter tip or whatever. I was upset for Hoggy for not winning the All-Ireland, and he'll be known as a great, no matter if he wins he won no Celtic Cross, but he will always be renowned as a great of Cork hurling. Obviously, wishing him all the best in retirement. Obviously, he does have Glen Rovers to think about in the next year. Obviously, they are out of the championship as well, so I think that was that kind of hinted into the decision a bit as well that Glen Rovers were out of the championship. He had a few days to think about his career, and then he made the decision on Instagram, obviously. But obviously, for me, from probably every person in Cork, best of luck to Patrick Horgan on his future ventures. An absolutely incredible ambassador for the game of hurling, incredible ambassador for Cork GAA, and we're wishing him all the best. Happy retirement, Hoggy. You absolutely deserve it.
Well said. Peter here says Huggy did a class interview with Square Ball Pod last year with Dave McIntyre in terms of the medal. He really gave an open and frank assessment on it. His chat with Don Lowe before the 2024 final was really emotional too. I love the story about how the gates of the park had to be locked to keep him out. He just lives hurling. We have a few comments in here as well. How are the lads? I think the lads are keeping pretty well, apart from Huggy being retired, of course. Peter says, Matthew, as we know, he played in 4 finals. Would you reckon the 2013 and 2024 will cut the deepest with Hoggy? I'd add the question here, and then lads, feel free to add in a question here for Matthew, just because obviously he's the man to chat about Hoggy's retirement. For me, lads, I wonder if you'd agree, if I were in that team, it would be this year's final that I'd regret, because I think the 2024 and 2013 ones, you could go out and say, do you know what, we gave it everything that we had. But the 2025 one, you can't say that they gave it everything that they had.
Yeah, 2021 as well, like against an incredible Limerick team as well. Like I know they were absolutely hammered in that particular final, but like Limerick were unbelievable that day. And I think as much as Cork could have given their absolute all on that day, and Limerick probably still would have beat them. So yeah, I think this year, is the one that I think they'll look back at with regrets, definitely. Given, look, they didn't play bad in the first half, but they obviously didn't play to their standards. But they were still 5 points up at half time. So yeah, and then obviously just what happened in the second half. So yeah, it is a shame, like, because I definitely think he could have given it a few more years, but look, he owes nothing to nobody. He's given so much to Cork, so you know, it's his decision, and you have to respect it, to be fair. Like,
yeah, exactly. And look, he was looking at those finals. I agree completely with Aaron. 2021, Cork could have played up to even over 100% if that is a thing, and Limerick still would have won the final. They were just in that kind of mood that day. When Garrett Hager hit the net, when Aaron Gillan hit the net, it was just wave after wave. 2013, in a weird way, I know that was early in Horgan's career, but that will hurt in many ways, because that was a clear team in a way that didn't achieve as much in the next few years. They went out in the first round of the qualifiers in 2014, and as well as that, the Cork played to their up. I know they got to a replay in the end, but I think Clare were probably the much better team in performance over the 2 games. And even when Hoggy got what looked like the winning score before Donald Donovan's equaliser, it just would have been daylight robbery if Cork would have won that day. But at the same time, there was a bit of regret, obviously, when the Cork players didn't play it down the corner like soccer players would do. They put the ball wide in the end and hoping that Clare wouldn't have one more attack in them. And it fell to the quarterback to put the ball over and they'd take it to the replay. But yeah, that was a lot of regrets. 2021, probably not. 2024, maybe so, because like as you mentioned so many times, Seamus, if Robbie O'Flynn's shot goes in, or even if Robbie O'Flynn put the ball over the bar, we could have been talking about a different story after that final. And 2025 was just, I can only describe it as a few months later as a capitulation in the second half. I don't know what happens to the team in many ways. They didn't perform to their utmost standard in the first half, but they were still 6 points up. But to score 2 points in the second half, that is seriously one that left behind them as well. And considering Tipperary deserved the All-Ireland, there's no doubt about it. And probably John McGrath or Jay Morris will get on to All-Stars and say we'll probably win hurler or one of them. But that was a Tipperary team that finished bottom of the Munster group in 2024. That was a Tipperary team that probably would have said it would be a great season to even reach the All-Ireland final. And Cork were favourites for the All-Ireland final, obviously, rightly so. They battered Dublin in the semi-finals. They won the Munster Championship. They won the Alliance League. They just didn't turn up in the final. And that one will hit hard. It will hit not just Horgan, but it will hit the likes of Seamus Hardy, Damien Cahalane, these players that have miles on the clock. And they will wonder what time is left in their careers. I think that was definitely one of the left behind, possibly 2013, the way they didn't close out the first game in particular as well. And 2024, because of that goal chance for Robbie O'Flynn as well. There is regrets, obviously, but the fact of the matter is Hoggy didn't get his All-Ireland that he deserved, and look, that's sport.
Yeah, like I do think that like it's one of those where 2013 you went down to the wire and you can leave kind of saying no regrets. That's why it was kind of the same with Mayo. That, don't get me wrong, the ones where 2016 where they lost by a point after the replay, 2017 when they lost after a point after being, Aaron, I think me and you would both agree, the better team for the majority of that 2017 All-Ireland final. If Donald Vaughan, I still maintain, if Donald Vaughan didn't get sent off, Mayo would have won. But the reality is that the one that hit the most for Mayo, the one, in my opinion, where everybody went like, oh, for God's sake, and kind of lost sympathy for them, was the 2021 All-Ireland final against Toronto, where they just didn't turn up. Or they could have no complaints, no what if this happened, what if that happened. They just didn't turn up. And this year's final would have hurt a lot more, I imagine, than previous years where you could go, you know what, we died with our boots on. We went out swinging. And you look at like Clare and Cork in that final in 24. That was just two world-class teams going at it. Those two world-class teams at the top of their game. Like the goal from Robert Downey and the goal from Tony Kelly and like all of the scores that we saw in that game, it was just world-class. And it was like, do you know what? Whoever wins this, fair play to them. And you play that, I truly think you play that game 10 times, both of them win it 5 times. They were so evenly matched. And look, that was just Clare's day. But there's a lot of debate. And Matthew, I'll go to you for this first. And then Liam, I'd love to get your opinion on it after, because Offaly obviously famously denied that Limerick team in the 90s. And they are always looked at as a team that had some of the greats to never win Liam McCarthy. Immediately after Hoggy announced his retirement, all the talk again started about the greats who have never won the Liam McCarthy Cup. How highly does Hoggy rank on that list for you, with the Dan Shanahans, the John Millans, the Kieran Careys of this world?
Mentioning John, the Mike Brick Walshes as well is another big name. Might be biased in this, but I think he ranks above them all. I think he ranks above at the top. John Millan, I get it to an extent. John Millan should be on that list. Dan Shanahan should be on that list. But there was other players in that Waterford team. There was the Owen Kellys. There was the Michael Brick Walshes. There was even the Seamus Prendergast. Like they were actually a very, very good Waterford team that came up against a superb Kilkenny team down through the years as well, and eventually Tipperary. With Cork, and I looked down through the years, like even 2019, Hoggy scoring 310 against Kilkenny. He was carrying Cork that day. He carried Cork in so many games down through the years in certain games as well. He scored 2-2 against Tipperary as a youngster in 2010. In 2015, he was trying to carry the mantle for Cork as well. In 2016, when they were bad times losing the Wexford in the qualifiers, Hoggy was still maintaining his performance levels. Like there was times when Cork with a hammering, like against Galway in 2015. And the one player that really shone in those teams was Patrick Horgan. Whereas with the Waterford team, there was a lot that stepped up at certain times, like the Kellys, like the likes of John Ballans and of course the Dan Shanahans. There was other players mentioned. Obviously, Kieran Carey, I think, is a great shout, because he was one player that really, really stood up for Limerick down through the 90s in particular as well. But in my honest opinion, I think Hoggy ranks at the top, if not the top 3. But
I agree.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely in the top 3. I think the Peter shout there, Tony Brown, is a great shout. Paul Flynn was very, very good, but he could also be quite inconsistent. Hoggy was very, very consistent throughout his entire career. I would argue Ken McGrath should be in the top 3 as well. I think he was absolutely amazing. Lee Chin as well deserves a shout. I know that because I think he won't. I think he won't get one. I think his window was 2019, and I was at that Wexford Tipperary semi-final, and you know, my second favourite county is Wexford. I grew up, spent my summers there, and I went to the semi-final to watch them against Tip. And I know you remember this, guys. Lee Chin's goal in the second half, when he scored that, I thought Wexford were going to do it. It really felt in the stadium like, because there was one play as well where Tip got a goal down the other end, and it got brought back for a point for Wexford because Brian Horgan had caught the ball behind the crossbar. And there was a real sense in the stadium of like, what the hell is going on? There seems to be some force from the heavens just dragging Wexford to the All-Ireland final here. So I really thought they were going to do it, but I think that was Lee Chin's chance. Liam, what would you be saying?
Yeah, I think if you're mentioning players as well, some of the Cannings from Galway, Ollie Canning could probably be another one you could throw up there as well. Probably not maybe top 3, but certainly up there as well. Stephen Bennett, yeah, could be a player as well. I would agree with Matthew though. I'd been saying it for the last couple of years that that if Horgan never ended up winning an All-Ireland, he would be the best player to never win an All-Ireland in hurling anyways. And it is a shame that he hasn't won one. And I find it hard at times when people would say to you which one would hurt the most, because there's obviously the different circumstances. Because you look at 2024, you look at 2013, like, I mean, he looked back on that one and think, had he won that so young in his career, there wouldn't have been as much maybe pressure on him over the next number of years to maybe win one. It's maybe like sort of like David Clifford with Kerry. Even though this year and over the last couple of years he would have been desperate to win another one, he had one in the bag already. Do you know what I mean? You could see the relief when Joe Canning won his one in 2017. It was just relief more than anything else. And then after that, okay, if you don't win another one, you don't win another one, but at least you have that one. Whereas with Horgan, if he'd have won the one in 2013, especially after the point he got as well, then I don't think the pressure would have been on him as much over the next couple of years. But then, look, when you look at last year, when you look at 2013, there's going to be regrets over those two ones, because you're always going to be thinking in your head, I should have done this different, I should have done that different. But then obviously this year's one, because they were big favourites going into it, and because like Matthew said there, like a lot of people at the start of the year weren't even predicting Tip to get out of Munster. Do you know what I mean? And then the fact that they went on to win the All-Ireland, a lot of people in Cork will probably be looking back at that going, this is one that's got away from us. And especially being, like, I thought you were going to go on and win it at halftime. When you got the goal from Shane Barrett, I thought, that's it, Cork have this one. But yeah, look, I would be ranking Horgan up as the best player never to win an All-Ireland. And a question for yourself, Matthew. For me, and I'm saying this mainly because I was at this game in 2019, the one you mentioned there, the 310 he got against Kilkenny in 2019 was one of the best individual displays I'd ever seen in my life. And I think it was, for me, I would argue, more than his performance against Tip in 2010. I would say that's his best ever performance, because he was kind of, I wouldn't say it was a one-man team in 2019, but it felt like it was a one-man team to a degree. And he was dragging them. He was scoring goals off his knees. He was powering penalties past Owen Murphy. He was catching balls over Hugh Lawler's head and scoring points over his shoulder. He scored some cracking goals over the years against Limerick, got cracking goals against Clare over the years. Like you mentioned there, his first ever championship goal against Offaly. I can remember that game as well. I don't know how, but I actually remember that game as well. But yeah, no, the best player to never win an All-Ireland. And for me, I would say his best ever performance in a Cork jersey was the 310 he got against Kilkenny in 2019.
I'd agree. Absolutely. Like, just because of the fact as well that he dragged Cork kicking and screaming back into that game. And Kilkenny were, like, you had the likes of Richie Hogan's and all them, and Michael Fenley's, like, the Colin Fenley's, like, they were playing as a team, and everyone stood up that day. You had the feeling from a Cork point of view that day that nobody else other than Hoggy stepped up. It was that kind of a performance, and he was scoring all sorts of goals and all sorts of points that day. 310 is a ridiculous margin in any game, but the fact he was scoring goals on his knees, the fact he was scoring goals catching balls over Hugh Lawler's head, the fact he was scoring points from ridiculous angles that day in a stadium that's so renowned in GA history in Croke Park, that was an outstanding display. You can't beat around the bush in terms of that performance as well. I think that was his best performance of his career, and that will always be remembered as, it's weird to call it kind of the Hoggy game, because Cork lost that day. Kilkenny won it, and it should be remembered that Kilkenny won the game and eventually got to the All-Ireland final, having beaten Limerick in the semi. But that game is more synonymous for Patrick Horgan's performance that day. It was just outstanding in so many levels.
It's like Peter Canavan in the '95 final against Dublin. where
Exactly.
he scored all but one of Tyrone's points and ended up on the losing side.
What the Cork scored 316 that day, was it? Or was it 318? Sorry, 318, wasn't it?
318, so 8 points without Hoggy.
That's outrageous.
Yeah.
It's unreal. I think that's his best performance of his career. I'd stick by his best moment of his career. I would say that goal in the Blackrock end, just because of the significance of it. Like the context behind that, if Hoggy didn't goal that, Cork would have been out the championship. And what would have happened then? Would Pat Ryan have been out of the job? Would Pat Ryan have been looked at as a Cork manager that gave so much to the county after that season? Probably not. So he changed the course of history by that goal in the Blackrock end. And he made kind of the Cork fans, I know they didn't win the All-Ireland in the end, but he made them believe again. And that was Hoggy in a nutshell, that even in the darkest of situations, he would drag his team kicking and screaming out of these sorts of situations, even in the club championship this year. Like for Glen Rovers, I think even looking back at the Middleton game last week, Glen Rovers scored 2 goals and 17 points. 2-9 came from Hoggy. Like he's just that kind of a player that when he's on a good day, he drags his team back into games on the cusp of winning. And even that wasn't enough to get the Glen over the line last week. And bear in mind, Hoggy's 37 years of age, and he's dragging his club back into these games and things like that as well. He scored 5 goals and 39 points this year in the Cork Premier Senior Hurling Championship. That is probably one that irks me a small bit, because I still think this might be an unpopular opinion, I do think he still had a lot more to give to a Cork jersey. Look at those scores, look at those numbers. Even from play, like you look at, I talked to this off air about this to Seamus and Aaron, about his performance against Dublin. Not just his scoring, but the way he was interlinking play in the forward line. Like his assist for the Tim O'Mahony goal in the second half was just something that only legends could do. The way he clicked with that full forward line beside him with Alan Connolly and Brian Hayes, I still think he's still a lot more to give. But obviously, it is his own decision. He has a family to think about. He has his own work commitments to think about as well. Obviously, wish him all the best in retirement. But I don't know what you think, lads, but I still think he had a lot more to give in the Cork jersey.
Do you feel...
No, I was just saying, people in the comments, Peter says Hoggy defo had more hurling, and he says if Pat Ryan stayed on, Hoggy would probably have stayed on. Liam, I'll throw this one to you as well, and then please proceed with the point you were going to make. Jer says the one I really felt Cork left behind in the Hoggy year was 2018. Nicky Quaid didn't pull off that incredible save. I think Cork would have won the All-Ireland that year. That Cork team has completely flown under the radar. That under John Myler, back-to-back Munster champions, really, really, really solid team. Like Owen Cadigan, I thought was performing well at fullback that year. Like players like that, you'd forget just how good Conor Lehan was that year. And that was the year that Fitzgibbon and Coleman burst onto the scene. Both got All-Stars at the end of the year. Seeing that Limerick went on to beat Galway in the final, I mean, even though it was close, it's conceivable that they could have won it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it goes back to the point of which one would instead of finals now, which semi-final would Horgan probably regret, the 2017 one or the 2018 one? Because that Cork team in 17 and 18, I mean, you think back to the Munster Championship quarter-final in 2017, and Cork were after beating Tipperary away from home, and Tip was after winning the All-Ireland the previous year by a country mile, to be honest with you. I think bar the semi-final in 2016 against Galway, they just blitzed everybody. They blitzed Kilkenny in the All-Ireland final. They blitzed, was that the year they put 7 past Waterford in the Munster final. You know, they blitzed everybody. And yet Cork went down there in the first round in Munster and beat them by, was it 4 points in the end, I think it was. And like they went on to win the Munster Championship. And then, look, Waterford had a really good team in the 2010s, and obviously they got to 2 finals in that time and pushed Kilkenny all the way in 16 in the semi-final replay as well. But I have a feeling they'll have big regrets over that, because I actually legit was thinking to myself at that time, it'll be a Galway Cork final. They're in the minor final before that. They'll be in the senior final as well. And then obviously we remember Ozzie Gleeson's wonder goal. That was one of the best goals we've ever seen in Croke Park. But then you go to 2018. And I will say, even though they went on to lose that game, I still would rank Hoggy's free against Limerick as one of his best moments. Because at the end of the day, even though, look, the result didn't go their way in the end, he's stepping up from, a good 50 yards out. Probably you could say 70, 80 yards out, judging by the angle he was at as well. And he had to sink that over the bar to force extra time. I mean, the calmness and sort of, I never like using this word, but the aura to step up and do that and to drag your team kicking and screaming into extra time, even though they'd let the lead slip and they could have been down and everything like that. For him to step up and do that was even incredible. And it just showed the mentality of him that he was desperate to win at all costs. But yeah, no, that the 2018 one, 2017 one, I'm not sure which one maybe they'd have more regrets over. But look, at the end of the day, look, the things have happened. And look, maybe if Cork had gone on to win that All-Ireland that year, you never know what could have happened after that. But one of the questions I want to just ask Matthew, do you feel, look, I presume he'll still stay playing for Glen Rovers over the next year or two, or maybe even 3 years. Especially could play till he's 42. He could be like Ronaldo and just keep going and going, to be honest with you. But do you feel like, what's he won? I think he's won 2 Munster titles, and I think he's lost a couple of finals. Do you feel he'll have regrets over that as well?
Potentially so. He has won a few Cork county championships, but obviously he lost a few finals. Obviously in 2010 against Stars, in 2014 the Glen just didn't turn up against Stars that year either. Yeah, I think he would have a lot of regrets over the club scene as well. Obviously they beat Patrick's well in 2016 and didn't kick on and win Munster that season. Obviously there was the enigma with Dean O'Kelly stuff. Obviously that's a separate issue and things like that. But yeah, he might have regrets over the club as well. Not to win a club or a county All-Ireland. That's just, for Hoggy's kind of brilliance as a player, that's unbelievable. Like you talk about so many seasons where Gooch. I know Gooch went on and won the All-Ireland with Dr. Crooks in the end, but there was those AIB ads where Gooch saying that the club championship is the toughest win to win of all. Hoggy hasn't won that or the Liam McCarthy Cup. It's unreal to think about it that way. But look, he'd be still regarded as a legend in Cork circles. And to answer your question on whether he'll play club, well, Donegal O'Connor's still playing club at the age of 44 at football. So I'd imagine, and Paddy Cassani's at 45. So I'd imagine Hoggy will do so when into his 40s. Even if he's playing in the full forward line. Like all the Glen need to do is keep Downey firing, keep Owen Downey firing, get me all Mullins more game time under his belt at club level, and fire the ball into him in the full forward line. That's all they need to do, because Hoggy's kind of his brain, his hurling gift will take care of the rest. So I still think he has many, many years to come in a Glen Rovers jersey, whether they'll win the county or not. The thing is, in the Cork Championship now, we have, obviously, I won't go into too much detail, but just in a general sense, you have Middleton, you have Blackrock, you have SARS, and you have the Bars, who all won county championships since 2020, and they're all 4 of them are in the semi-finals this season as well. I feel like it's a close shop in terms of clubs with those 4 clubs. And the Glen, I know they lost by 2 to Middleton, but they seem a bit off it just yet. So it remains to be seen whether Hoggy will get another chance at getting the main honours at club level, which is another kind of sad thing to see as a neutral. But we'll see over the next few seasons. I think he'll stay on till playing until about 40. Like, you look at Dan Shannon in Waterford. How long did he play for? So, yeah. I think
Plus, as well, he's not the type that was relying on pace. I mean, we've seen examples like Dean Rock is still class for Ballymun Kickham's, and like Dean Rock never relied on pace. He never relied on that. And we've seen players, I'm not going to name names because I don't want to be mean and like to catch anybody to catch strays, but we've seen players across all the codes who were fantastic because primarily of their pace. And when they lose that, as they get older and the body slows down, they're not anywhere near as effective as they were. Whereas players like Dean Rock, like Mossy Quinn, like Patrick Horgan, like Owen Kelly from Tipperary, he's still doing it for the club. John Doyle is another one like that. They're just so smart, and their game intelligence is so smart that as they get older, I mean, the speed was never the thing that made them that great. It was always their game IQ, and that actually potentially gets better as you get older. So there's no question about it. I think Hoggy will still be around for years to come. But what we are going to move on to now, all the best in retirement, Hoggy, no doubt one of the game's greats. We're going to move to the Hurling All-Stars, which Hoggy was included in. So over the week, the official Hurling All-Star nominees were revealed. I'm just going to run through the full list of the goalkeepers: Rhys Shelley from Tipperary, Patrick Collins from Cork, and Nicky Quaid from Limerick. The defenders: Owen Connolly from Tipperary, Ronan Maher from Tip, Robert Doyle, Michael Breen, Brian O'Mara, and Craig Morgan, all from Tip. Then Sean O'Donoghue, Niall O'Leary, Mark Coleman, Kieran Joyce from Cork, Mike Casey, Kyle Hayes, Dan Morrissey from Limerick, Mikey Carey and Hugh Lawler from Kilkenny, Conor Burke and John Bellew from Dublin, Mark Fitzgerald from Waterford. In the midfielders, Dara Fitzgibbon and Tim O'Mahony from Cork, Cian Kenny from Kilkenny, Adam English from Limerick, Willie Connors from Tip, and Carl Mannion from Galway. In the forwards, then Jake Morris, Andrew Orman, Darren McCarthy, Jason Ford, and John McGrath from Tip, Shane Barrett, Alan Connolly, Brian Hayes, and Hoggy from Cork, Aaron Gillan, Keane Lynch from Limerick, Keane O'Sullivan and Sean Curry from Dublin, Billy Ryan, Mossy Keown and TJ Reid from Kilkenny, Lee Chin from Wexford, and Stephen Bennett from Waterford. The Young Hurler of the Year nominees then is Adam English, Darren McCarthy, and Robert Doyle. And the Hurler of the Year nominees is John McGrath, Jake Morris, and Brian Hayes. So, Aaron, I'll come to you first. Your first thoughts when you saw the All-Star nominee list in full. What was your first reaction?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely stacked with so much talent. And to be fair, I know there has been a few controversies with the All-Stars down the years and picks and everything else. And obviously we'll see when the actual team comes out in terms of what they actually go with. Like, I think maybe the only player that jumped out, I think that was a little bit unlucky and not getting in, was maybe Jordan Malloy of Kilkenny. I thought he had a very, very good season for Kilkenny. Is very, very solid around midfield, and maybe because he's not as big of a profile, that's maybe why he didn't get a mention. I'm not entirely sure, but I thought that was a little bit harsh. But yeah, look, looking at it, like some top players in there, like there was a part of me that thought, could John Heatherton of Dublin maybe snuck in? But yeah, I think
hang on. Let's address that right now. How in the living fuck are Limerick getting 7 All-Star nominees and Dublin are getting 4? What's going on?
Yeah,
who beat Limerick? Who beat them?
That was
Who
the
knocked
only
them out
thing
of the championship? Why did they just get 7?
The only thing is, and look, obviously I'm a Dublin fan, I agree with you, but the only thing is Limerick obviously got to a Munster final. They lost on penalties. They did have still, not by their standards, they were still, a very good team. They produced some brilliant moments throughout Munster. They obviously fell apart against Dublin and we all loved it, don't get me wrong, but I don't know. I wouldn't have had all 7 Limerick lads in there. I do think John Heatherton definitely deserved the shout. I know some people would say, well, he didn't always start. He was kind of coming off the bench a lot, like against Limerick and whatnot, and he probably was quite ineffective versus Cork. But still think he did have some very good moments.
I thought Brian Hayes was unlucky to not be included.
That was the other one as well. Yeah,
over the course of the year, and I actually thought Conor McHugh as well was fantastic. And then another one, Sean Brennan. I thought Sean Brennan, you think about that save from Aaron Gillan, like if he doesn't save that, Limerick probably find a way through. Yes. I know he made mistakes in other games, but
yes, Seamus.
So did Patrick Collins.
I know he did, but the bone to pick there, and it's a pretty simple one. He conceded 7 in the semi-final. Yeah. I know that's not completely sharp.
But I mean, poor fucker didn't stand a chance. The Dublin defense started like the Red Sea.
I will say, sorry, Aaron. I will say, in terms of a Dublin point of view, in terms of John Heatherton, I certainly think he deserved a nominee over Aaron Gillan. Like, I don't honestly get why players are in because of their name. Gillan was brilliant last season, and he was brilliant, obviously deservedly hurled the year in 2023. But honestly, lads, what did he do this year to get an All-Star? He wasn't one of the top scorers overall. He wasn't one of the top scorers for play. He was way off the pace in the quarterfinal against Dublin as well. He wasn't one of Limerick's main forwards in the Munster final. That was Aidan O'Connor and Shane O'Brien when he came on. It's just a bone to pick there. Shane O'Brien probably deserves a nominee over Aaron Gillan. I don't honestly get why the All-Stars pick nominees basically because of their name. It's just, I think it's wrong. It's always happened, but it's just wrong.
But I think it's more annoying when like you get an underdog victory and you turn over a team and you have players then like Brian Hayes who are amazing, and then Brian Hayes doesn't get in, but Gillan just waltzes in anyway. Like it's kind of, I don't know. Look, there's always going to be a couple that you're not happy about or anything like that. But having looked at the list, what are the ones that you feel are slam dunks that have to be in? Actually, before we do that, I do want to debate this as well with you. When the list for the Hurler of the Years was revealed, so a lot of people were surprised when the nominees for Hurler of the Year were revealed that Ronan Maher was not featured in the 3. He was man of the match in the All-Ireland hurling final, Tipperary captain. He was absolutely sensational throughout the course of the year. Aaron, do people have a right to question this? Should Ronan Maher be included?
From what I remember, I think he's a little bit unlucky, but then I do think it's one of them. Like, it's who would you have put him in for? Like, I think like to have all 3 Tipperary players in for Hurler of the Year would have felt a little bit harsh. And to be fair, I think it would have been a bit of revisionism on Brian Hayes, who I think was outstanding throughout the entire season. I know things didn't go too well in the final, but like I thought he had an unbelievable year, and even in the semi-finals as well versus Dublin.
It just is confusing when Maher completely bossed it on Hayes, and Hayes goes,
like
Maher doesn't.
Yeah, like it had an unbelievable final. Like I don't know, like maybe if we go back through Munster, maybe there's reasons for it. I do think maybe he should have got in ahead of Jake Morris, though. I think Jake Morris had a very good year as well. But like we're talking about,
I agree, though. By the way, I'd have Hayes in,
yeah.
But I'd have Maher in too, and I'd have McGrath.
Yeah.
That would have been my 3.
And it's interesting, like, because Morris was obviously playing in a different role. Like, he was playing in the half-forward line, so it was different, obviously, to what we would usually see from him. And I thought he was absolutely outstanding in terms of vacating his his role on the full forward line. It was a tricky one, but I probably would have had Ronan Maher over Jake Morris, I think.
It's like you can argue both cases. My one always is, and this is kind of the point when I'm talking about other sports, I've seen a great example made about why somebody was talking about how Roy Keane was actually the most important player to Manchester United over, the Giggs and the Scholes and all these players. And it's like, take Giggs out of Man United and now take Keane out of Man United. Like, I think genuinely with take Jake Morris out, you lose a very, 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 very good forward who was a leader throughout the entire season. You take Ronan Maher out the team, you lose the linchpin of your entire defence.
Yeah, we're all in agreement, though, that John McGrath is winning it, though, surely.
John McGrath is winning it anyway, but
I think a lot of people think Jay Morris should win it, and including RT themselves. RT selected Jay Morris as earlier the year. I go over John McGrath as well. Just saying.
Jake Morris.
Do you think Morris should be in over Maher?
Judging by the point you made there, Seamus, like if Jake Morris is out of the tip team, you still have Andy Armand. You still have John McGrath. You still have Darren McCarthy. You still have all these forwards. I definitely agree. If you take Ronan Maher out, who do you replace him with? So judging by that, I probably would have gone for Ronan Maher over Jake Morris. But at the same time, it would anger a lot of people if Jake Morris was left out of that 3.
Agreed. I think maybe it would anger the same amount of people that pissed off with Ronan Maher. Liam, you get your take?
Yeah, and I've interviewed Ronan Maher twice in the last month, so I feel like if he's watching this, Ronan, I hope I can still interview you again after this. But no, like when you do kind of put it down like that, it does beg the question how he's not up for it. But like it is difficult because look, like Garen said there, you can't just throw 3 tip players in. I don't think that'd be right at all, to be honest with you. Like you have to have at least one Cork player in there. And Brian Hayes was superb for Cork this season. He was absolutely outstanding, and he's still like I don't care if he was off the pace in the All-Ireland final, he's still one of the most dangerous forwards in the country and would walk into every other team's forward lines in the country when given a chance to. I do feel though that like look, I do agree if you were to take Ronan Maher out of that Tipperary team, they probably, well, not that they'd collapse, but they certainly wouldn't win an All-Ireland. There's no question about that. He's an absolute colossal of a centre-back. And listen, he's well worthy of the All-Star, never mind not getting Hurler of the Year. But I just feel like Jake Morris for me was someone who was getting kind of, not, I wouldn't say to the same sort of level, but it's kind of like Ousmane Dembele winning the Ballon d'Or, kind of written off for years, and people maybe thinking, is he the man to take a team forward? Is he going to lead someone to the big holy grail of, obviously for Dembele to be winning a Champions League, for Morris to be winning an All-Ireland. Morris this year went up a gear for Tipperary, and he was absolutely outstanding in every single game he played. He was a constant threat off his left, off his right. He was strong in the tackle. He was catching ball. His movement was unbelievable. So I kind of agree. I do agree with you, Seamus. You take Jake Morris out of a team, you know, you still got a lot of options there. Whereas Ronan Maher is the type of player that you take him out, very similar to if you had ever taken his brother out of the Tipperary team, you're losing so much. Or for me, it was always Brendan Maher. You take Brendan Maher out of Tipperary, by God, you just cannot replace an engine like that. But I do think Jake Morris is fully worthy of being on the list there. And up until a couple of months ago, I would have been picking him as, I'd said if Tipperary go on to win the All-Ireland, this is before the All-Ireland final, I would have been picking him to win Hurler of the Year. But I just think John McGrath, the way he's hurled this year, the goals he's gotten, I mean, the way he got the goal, his goal against Kilkenny in the semi-final, like it was right in front of me in the Cusack stand. It was an absolute rocket. No goalkeeper in the country saving it. The 2 goals against Limerick, the performance against Cork in the All-Ireland final, the semi-final, the second half in particular, was second to none. So I would be giving it, I would agree with you, I would be giving it to him. But I suppose, look, I think for Ronan Maher, I don't think he'd be too pushed about not winning Hurler of the Year. He's gotten to say that, I think what would be more significant to him is the fact that he can go on the wall outside Temple Stadium for Turles Sarsfields. He can go onto that wall that, you know, many players in the past who captained Tipperary to All-Irelands from Turles Sarsfields have. I feel like he'll be remembered more for that than winning Hurler of the Year. But I do get your point. I think you take Morris out of the team, you'd still have an unreal forward line, and you know, you've other players that you could throw in there as well. But you do take Ronan Maher out of the Tipperary team, then for me, they're not winning at All-Ireland.
One thing as well, lads. I was doing the followers hurling all-star team, where followers vote or whatever, and I put up the team. Brian Hayes was corner forward, obviously. Brian Hayes is nominated for Hurler of the Year. There was a few Tipperary fans in the comments saying Brian Hayes has no place in that team.
No.
Like, I mean,
No.
I have to put this out there.
No.
Tipperary fans genuinely think, and I like Tipperary as a county, done well to win the All-Ireland this year.
You know, you wore the jersey on the
podcast. we part that, but there's a lot of Tipperary fans complaining that they didn't get 3 Hurler of the Year nominees, and there was a lot of Tipperary fans complaining that Brian Hayes was in the forward line and stuff like that. I'll just ask the question for Tipperary: does the season depend on one game?
No,
seriously, no. Like it's like, I mean, you have to. Tipperary having 3 player of the year nominees would have been an absolute joke, in all honesty, because Cork were the best team probably up until the All-Ireland final, and yeah, Tipperary did turn up at the final. They absolutely deserved to win it, and they deserved to get 2 player of the year nominees, but 3, and to have a player above Brian Hayes in the hurling of the year team. I mean,
I think it's quite similar to the 2009 Kerry win, in that they got out of Munster, they finished 3rd, they were very, very good, but they timed the sprint really well. They kind of got through the quarterfinal against a very lackluster Galway, and then they hit form at the right time, beat Kilkenny, beat Cork, win the All-Ireland. And look, that's all she wrote. Like, that's what people are going to remember, you know, in 50 years. It's going to just say that Tipperary won it in 2025. But I do agree. I think if you look over the course of the entire year, Brian Hayes deserves to be in there. He was fantastic throughout the entire year. But and maybe look to counter myself a little bit. We were rusty enough in Leinster, and yeah, the Limerick game was where we shot up, and then we got a bad beating off Cork. But I still think we should have got more than 4. But interesting. What?
Should I just go, because my county was not winning any All-Stars anyway?
They don't give out All-Stars. Don't give All-Stars to Offaly anymore.
No. Maybe in a few years, we'll see. We'll see.
To be fair, I will say from Offaly point of view, Cúilín Sampson, Liam, was he robbed of it?
I wouldn't say he was robbed, because like at the end of the day, we won 1 game in Leinster, but I was thinking to myself, if there was to be, say, 1 from every county, some people would say Brian Duignan, because he got a lot of scores this year. But for me, if there was 1 from Offaly, it'd be Cúilín Sampson. He was unbelievable all season for us, and he's performing exceptionally well for Shinrone as well in the club championship. He's the type of player that will perform for your county, but he'll also, like Horgan, he'll step up for your club when needed as well. But no, don't be saying Robs now. we won 1 game in Leinster. We won 1 game in Leinster, and it was against, no disrespecting him, but it was against Antrim. Like, I know we were probably could have bet Dublin or could have bet Wexford, but no, there's no robbery there.
Yeah, like I do agree that like look, it was a year where Offaly made good steps forward. Antrim have been a solid team in Leinster. I know that the Davy Fitz appointment hasn't gone the way that they would have wanted it to go so far, but it's still a very, very good win because Antrim have done that. And like I was slightly worried for Offaly because I've seen Antrim do that. I've seen them look shite in other games in Leinster, and I've seen like Westmeath, for example, really, really put it up to Leinster teams and like get a draw against Wexford, and then they play Antrim and Antrim still beat them. Because Antrim, it's like Antrim just put all their poker chips on that game and go, okay, we'll win that one. Right? That they kind of conserve themselves almost. So I think that was kind of what Offaly did well this year. Is they knew which ones they had to win. Liam, you can join Clare in the No All-Star nominee club.
First time, is it 2017 or 2018 that they have got an All-Star?
Crazy. It was a year. Like this was a year equivalent of being hungover. Like this is a year equivalent to just like Clare they'd won the All-Ireland. It was like they woke up, still in nightclub, still dressed in everything that they were wearing the night before, and it just kind of didn't. It was just about getting home, going home and taking care of your wounds. It was a very, very good year for Clare, obviously in 24, but I never thought that they were going to go back to back. Same way I didn't think Armagh were going to go back to back. Again, if you look at the history books, teams don't tend to go back to back when they bridge a long gap. Aaron, we have a question in for us after this part, because what I'm going to do before we move on, and I'm going to get moving in a little bit quicker because obviously we've got a lot to get through before we start getting delusional. Aaron, I'll start with you. Obviously, we have the nominees for the Hurler of the Year. The nominees for Hurler of the Year are in John McGrath, Jake Morris, and Brian Hayes. Which out of the three do you think will and should win the award?
I think John McGrath. Yeah, John McGrath all day long. I think it's interesting. I think both hurling and football are no-brainers, to be honest with you, in terms of the decisions as to who will win them. Like some of his performances were outstanding. The goals he obviously scored in the final, hat-tricks left, right and centre, big goals, big moments. Nailed on.
Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely agree. John McGrath as Hurler of the Year. I said it the night of the All-Ireland final that he should win it despite RT saying Jake Morris, and I stick by that. The goals he was getting this year, the goal against Kilkenny was absolutely superb. Even in the early round, scored 2 goals against Limerick. Hurler of the Year is all about performing for the whole season, and John McGrath did that. So for me, it's a no-brainer. Same as Aaron, John McGrath.
Emo?
John McGrath, 100%. I was saying it'd be Jake Morris up until the All-Ireland final, but then when you sort of had a couple of days to look back on the season and see the journeys that these guys have been on, especially with John McGrath as well, and you look at the goals that he got and the way he dragged Tipperary through games and the threat that he was for fullbacks. I mean, you look at the players he was marking this year as well, and you just said, no, do you know what? If you're marking the caliber of fullbacks that he'd been marking this year and you're getting the scores that he did, you deserve it all day long.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look across the year, there's no doubt John McGrath had the biggest impact on the championship. The goals he got against Limerick in match day 1, the goals he got against Clare, when the championship turned for Tipperary and they got such a statement win. And then you talk about his goal against Kilkenny in the semi-final, and you talk about his performance in the final against Cork. He was the one who hit the knockout blows for Tipperary across the entire year. So he's the one who had the biggest impact, and therefore I think he should win Hurler of the Year. We'll move on then to the football ones. The official Gaelic Football All-Star nominees were revealed this morning. So we're going to get them up right now. So the full list of the All-Stars. Interestingly, lads, it's the first time since 1996 that this has happened. For the first time since 1996, Donegal have got more All-Star nominees than Kerry. It's the first time since the 1996 All-Ireland final, with a losing team in the final, has got more All-Star nominees than the winners. Matthew, does this surprise you at all?
Maybe a small bit, considering Kerry were so dominant in the final. But up until that point, you have to remember this as well. Kerry were pretty ordinary up until when they got to Croke Park against the likes of Armagh, Tyrone and Donegal after that. So judging by that, I would think it's fair enough. But it's still shocking all the same. Look at the numbers there. But at the same time, who would you put in that isn't already in from a Kerry point of view there? Like you look at midfield there, like Joe Connor's the only guy. I know a lot of people say Mark O'Shea and Sean O'Brien, but they really only announced themselves once it came to the end of the championship. It's about the whole year, so it doesn't really translate onto that. I think Paul Ganey would have got one if he wasn't injured midway through the season. If he wasn't injured in that Cork game at Park Heave, I still think Paul Ganey would have gotten an All-Star nominee. But look, that's where the cookie crumbles there. And in the end, I actually think Sean Patton was hard done by in goal from a Donegal point of view, not getting an All-Star nominee. So maybe you could argue Donegal may have got more, but it's kind of a weird one, isn't it? Like, you look at the number, you think it's weird. But at the same time, when you look at the players on the list for both Donegal and Kerry, you would think it's just about right. I don't know if you agree.
I'd probably say so. I'd probably agree. Aaron, what do you think? It's rare that we see that.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, but I think it's one of them. Like, it's it's one player more than another. Do you know what I mean? And they still got 9. Like they still got 9 all-star nominations. Donegal obviously got 10. So, and I think when you look through the players as well, like I think it's completely fair. In terms of the players that are there. In terms of both players that have been nominated. I think there are a few players from looking at it that are a little bit unlucky though to miss out. I think Owen Frayne was definitely a player I would have looked towards for Meath, who had a very impressive season. I think Donald Keoghan as well, I think was very good. And that's obviously coming from a Dublin fan, noticing 2 Meath players. And I think there is a shout. Michael McKernan maybe could have got a mention. I thought he was very good. I know he got injured, obviously, in the group stages, towards the end of the group stages, but a lot of people were talking about him as maybe like a Footballer of the Year candidate up until he got injured. But no, in terms of the players that are there for Donegal and Kerry, like even looking through them here as well, like there isn't really like I do agree with Matthew. I think Sean Patton definitely deserves a mention. But looking at the Kerry players that are there. Like I think we forget as well, one of the reasons why, spoiler alert, we're all probably going to say David Clifford as Footballer of the Year is because he was so good. And with him being so good, it obviously means, that took maybe the opportunity away for other players maybe to shine as well. Do you know what I mean? So, no, I do think it is fair.
Yeah, no, I think it would be fair. Peter says, did Sam O'Roy get nominated? Yes, he did. Now, interestingly, Aaron, if we can, I feel like maybe we try and take off the Dublin hats a little bit for a second, because in a year where, to be honest, we did fuck all, like we lost the Leinster Championship and then got to the quarterfinal, we've still managed to pick up 2 All-Star nominees. And like, I don't understand, to be honest, how that's the case. I think O'Coughlin Byrne was good.
Kieran Kilkenny.
Still surprised how Kieran Kilkenny's managed to end up on that list.
Do you know what that is though? Like, because if like looking at the list on the GA website, and I don't know if it's like it's the last forward who's mentioned. So it's like they got 17 players on there. Right, we got to get a Dublin player on, just because there has to be a Dublin player on here. So who will we throw on? Let's just throw on Kieran Kilkenny. Sure, he's the easiest one to throw on. If you were going to throw on a Dublin forward, I probably actually would have put in Sean Bugler. I thought he had a very good season for Dublin. So I think he was maybe a little bit unlucky there. Like, he couldn't put Con in. He was injured for half the year, half the championship. I think if at a stretch you'd say Sean Bugler, but I don't know. Like, to see, like, don't get me wrong, we're all big Kieran Kilkenny fans. He's an unbelievable footballer, brilliant player, but no, I don't think he should have got a nomination. And the Padara Cufford Byrne one, I probably would have gone with Cúilín McGuinness, to be honest.
I think McGuinness was really, really good. Like, but there's no question about it. Like, Kilkenny's an icon. He's a legend of Dublin.
Yeah.
But he wasn't that great this year. Like, it's not like All-Star nominee means like you were the best in the country. And like, I think again, my takeaway from it is that if you were gone, would the county's season have been drastically different if you weren't there? You look at like Ronan Marr, that's the point I was making for Ronan Marr earlier, why I said John McGrath should be Hurler of the Year, why we all think that David Clifford should win Footballer of the Year, is if you were to take that person out of the equation, take them out of the team and they're just not in the running, they changed the championship the most by being there. And I think Dublin were, to be honest, frighteningly so, pretty irrelevant to the championship this year. Like we got a very, very good win away against Galway, but then haven't seen how Galway just kind of went on to do very little in the championship. It's not a victory that aged like fine wine. It's not like we beat a team that then went on to win the All-Ireland. We beat a team who then went out tamely at the very same stage that we went out. So it's questionable, and it's understandable why Desi then called it at the end, because it is time for a new launch, and obviously Ger Brennan is a good man to be coming in to do that. Interestingly, there's a few funny typos. So I don't know if you heard about this lad, Rory Grogan from Armagh. He's up for an All-Star nominee. And also we have under the Young Footballer of the Year, which I haven't mentioned yet, the Young Footballer of the Year is going to be contested by Oisin Connaughty, Finbar O'Rourke and Matthew Thompson. But in the Footballer of the Year section, they have David Clifford, Joe O'Connor and Michael Murphy down. But right beside Michael Murphy's name, they have the letters YPOTY. So Michael Murphy apparently is up for Young Player of the Year at 37 years of age.
Is this on the GA? Is this on the GA website or?
It's on the yeah.
No, it's on the RTE website. RTE Sport.
Oh, it's on the RTE one. I was looking at the GA one. I was like, they must have fixed it.
It's. I mean, Murphy's still young, you know.
Murphy, yeah. Who says he can't go for it? Who says he can't go for it?
It was his first season for Donegal, technically. So, you know, it was his first
season, yeah.
New kid on the block. I think if we're going to be honest as well, lads, while the hurling was, there was definitely room for debate between John McGrath and Jake Morris and Brian Hayes. The Football Player of the Year is much more straightforward than the hurling. David Clifford has to be, in my opinion, Footballer of the Year. I'll go to you, Aaron, first. I don't think there's much room for debate here.
No, absolutely not. I think if you're to put in 2 and 3, I'd actually probably have Joe O'Connor above Michael Murphy. I think Joe O'Connor was outstanding for Kerry around midfield. But no, yeah, it's a very easy choice, like David Clifford.
Matthew?
This is like an exam where you know the answers before you walk in the door. David Clifford is winning Footballer of the Year. I don't you look at his scoring record this year, the amount he scored from play. I think throughout the whole season he scored 92 points, and I think something like 9 goals. I think it was absolutely outstanding throughout the whole season, and he's adapted to the new rules really well. So David Clifford's the obvious choice. I agree with Aaron. If Joe O'Connor was playing any other year, he'd be Footballer of the Year, without a doubt. He was outstanding. But it's just the fact he's up against a super freak. David Clifford, Footballer of the Year, no debate.
Liam, I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, and the scary thing is that this would then be his 3rd Footballer of the Year already.
Yeah, and like watching him in the flesh at the All-Ireland final, like it was just amazing watching him being man-marked the entire game. Like, Cole wasn't even looking at the ball. He wasn't looking at the game. He was only looking at, well, he was looking up anyway, but he was looking at Clifford in the eye the entire game. I'd say Clifford touched, like, in comparison to Paddy, who touched the ball, 74 times? I'd say Clifford touched the ball, 9 times? And he got 9, was it 9 points he got in the end? Or 9 points, I think? Like, you just don't do that in an All-Ireland final. In football, anyway, you don't score 7, 8, 9 points from play in an All-Ireland final. You don't kick the 2-pointers that he did. And like, even when Kerry were underperforming, say, even in the league as well, he was the one that was stepping up. The hat-trick he got against Tyrone at the start of the year in the league, he's the one who kind of just put the nail to the sword against Clare in the Munster final. Even against Meath, he was still one of Kerry's better players. It wasn't great, but he was still one of their better players. Obviously performed, like, he got the hat-trick against Cavan before it even went to Croke Park. Like, he had every right to be calling out the Kerry supporters to come and support them, because he had been backing it up every single game. And then, yeah, like the performance against Armagh. I mean, Sean O'Shea that day was absolutely terrific. He was absolutely on fire. But don't forget, I think Clifford got 7 points that game as well. And the point that went all over social media as well against Armagh down that end, the tricky angle, and the goal he got against Tyrone, and I mean the performance in the All-Ireland final. He's a generational talent. He's the Messi of Gaelic football, and that's that. And there'll be no Joe O'Connor is extremely unlucky. He's actually very, very unlucky that Clifford just had the year that he had. I do agree with Aaron and Matthew. If you take David Clifford out of it, I think Joe O'Connor wins it over Michael Murphy. But yeah, no, David Clifford 100%. And I don't think Donegal having too many or having more than Kerry in a way is a bit of a surprise, because Kerry weren't excellent up until they got to Croke Park, or even maybe even the Cavan game. I think they weren't even that bad, to be fair. But up until that point, they weren't brilliant throughout the year. Donegal were having to get past tough battles in Ulster, like Monaghan, like Down, like the Ulster final against Armagh. They had to come back from 7 points down against Monaghan. Okay, they absolutely wiped the floor with Meath in the semi-final, but they had to come through some tough battles in that championship. So I don't think it's too much of a stretch of imagination to see Donegal getting more All-Star nominations than Kerry.
Just one thing before we finish this as well, Seamus. Derry won 0 games this year. How on earth did they get one All-Star? How did Mayo get one All-Star? What? Like, it's just...
Yeah.
Did Mayo even play in the fucking championship this year? Like?
To be fair to Conor Glass, though, I do actually think he did have a very good year. So I do understand.
Glass played well. Who did Mayo get?
Jack Coyne.
Huh?
Okay.
What?
No, but honestly, I'd put my Cork hat on now, but I think Brian O'Driscoll deserved a nominee over Jack Coyne in defence. Honestly.
Yeah.
It's good to see Oran Murdoch in.
True, yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. Like, it's good to see him get in, because like there was a chance that maybe he wouldn't have got recognised.
No,
I am surprised looking at the list, like seeing a couple, and I'm like,
I don't think Pater O'Coffey Byrne is the worst shout. If I'm being,
he's not the worst shout. No.
I think like just from a Dublin perspective, I feel like Kilkenny's one a bit like Galan with the hurling. It's just throw out a big name maybe to a degree. But I think Pater O'Coffey Byrne was actually good for Dublin this year. I think he's actually kind of warranted it, to be honest. I think he's going to be a great player for Dublin over the next couple of years.
No, he's very good in it, and we needed him this year because obviously Fenton had stepped away. But we'll see. Jack says Graham should be nominated. Obviously, that's Graham O'Sullivan. Jack Nolte says that's the issue more than Donegal with 10. Look, there's no question about it. They're always going to split opinions, but it's interesting that it is the first time since 1996 where the losers of the All-Ireland final have more than the winners. And now we move on to the personal club previews for the weekend. So first of all, I mean, there's plenty of action to choose from, but I'll go first to you, Liam. What game in the club championship, or what games are you most looking forward to this weekend?
Well, I suppose I'll do this in this format. So I suppose from my own county's perspective this weekend, it's the football championship. So we have 2 quarterfinals. We have Road against Bracknell, which would no disrespect to Bracknell, but Road will win that game comfortably enough. For Bannon Shamrocks is the other quarterfinal, which I'm doing the commentary for Sunday. I think it could be an even enough game, but Shamrocks were very poor against Tullamore in the group stages, a lot poorer than a lot of us anticipated, because Shamrocks have a lot of Offaly footballers in their panel, and they just flattered to deceive, to be honest with you. So that might be an interesting game this weekend. I'm looking forward to it anyways. It should be an even, well, I'd say even contest, but should be a good game nonetheless. One game that, a couple of games that stand out to me anyways. First one anyways in Kilkenny is Thomastown and Ballyhale Shamrocks in the Kilkenny Hurling Championship. Met each other last year. Yep, there we go, Peter. Met each other last year in the quarterfinal stages. Thomastown taking Ballyhale out of the championship, which I feel like it may have felt like a shock last year, but at the same time, when you do look back, Ballyhale were not at their best last year. They were really, really struggling last year, especially in the early stages of that league championship format that they have. They were really, really struggling. And it kind of felt like they had to be put out of their misery in a way. Whereas this year now, Thomastown, it was interesting with them because when you do look back now, maybe them getting the beating that they did against Castletown-Gagan, which is no shame. It's actually no shame at all, because Castletown-Gagan are a very, very solid team, very, very well coached by Alan Mangan. But when you look at Thomastown, they just won the intermediate in Kilkenny, which is very hard to do. They went on to win the All-Ireland. They then came and a shock then to win and just took out all the big dogs in Kilkenny and won the Kilkenny Championship. And so in a way, you can't really blame them for going to Castletown-Gagan with maybe not a lot of motivation to go win it, because they've been on the road for such a long time. But the question for me this year was, and I know a few people down in Kilkenny, and I'd said this to them a few months ago, will Thomastown challenge for Kilkenny this year after last year? And a lot of them are saying no. Much like kind of Clare, the way you're describing it, they'll be hungover this year. But you look at them now, they performed relatively well in that league final against O'Loughlin Gales. There was the last weekend or the weekend before. Like, they only lost by 4 points, and they were missing the Donnellys as well, which is crucial for them. Absolutely massive for them. So I feel like this weekend's game between Thomastown and Ballyhale could be one to feast on. And like, obviously, I know you are, and you've predicted Ballyhale to win the Leinster Championship, and that's 100% fair, because Ballyhale are one of arguably the greatest club side in hurling terms of all time, and they still have all the top class players in their team. But they'll be wary of Thomastown this weekend. They'll know about last year, and Ballyhale haven't been at their best even this season yet either, to a degree. Now, I know the scoreline they put up the last day, but I feel like this will be an interesting test of character for both sides. So I'm really, really looking forward to that game. And I suppose another game I'll give a mention to as well this weekend is the clash in the Dublin Senior Hurling Championship between Nafina and Cúilín. I think that could be
don't worry when you prick.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I look, obviously I'm still bitter about last year losing to Nafina. I'm bitter about losing to Cúilín in 27. Do you know what? I hate both clubs. But yeah, no, I'm really intrigued by that game, because obviously the question coming into this season, would Nafina be able to go back to back, well, go 3 in a row in Dublin after Neil O'Callaghan going away for the Dublin job? But they're still going very, very strong, and I would still probably rank them as the team to beat in Dublin this year, and probably still the team to beat even in Leinster to a degree as well, if they were to get out of Dublin, you know, because they were rightful All-Ireland winners last year, and they've such a strong panel amongst them as well. So I suppose that game I'm looking forward to, and I suppose maybe one more game. I think Lockmore, Castleiney, and Toomevara in the Tip Senior Hurling Championship could be a very interesting.
You have a tendency for this going on.
Yes.
Go for the clean sweep. Which one would Aaron pick?
Scrambling around now trying to find one.
Erigal Kiran in Tyrone. You didn't pick that one, no?
No, I actually don't.
Okay, well, that would be, seriously, I'd be like, someone's in on this, like.
I'll let you take the floor now.
Well, Matthew, I will show it to you. Liam was about to touch on it, but Lockmore versus Toomevara.
Yeah, interesting game this, because you have John McGrath playing for Lockmore Castleiney, one who we mentioned will be hurler of the year, and you have Toomevara with Darragh McCarthy in there. So Toomevara are kind of a team that have a lot of history, but they're very good in the Tipperary Championship at rising through the grades and things like that, and hopefully they can fulfill their potential by beating Lockmore Castleiney. But Lockmore Castleiney's, I think I've seen online over the weekend, over the week indeed, that their unbeaten record across both courts and Tip is absolutely brilliant over the last few years. They're going for a double-double this year. They're doing very well in the football. In the hurling, they're going well, but there's a lot of clubs there that want their crown. Nina Roger, another, I think they're playing Kilron McDonough's this weekend in the quarterfinal. I have to double check that. I think they are. But you have Toomevara and you have Nina Roger, two clubs that haven't won a Tipperary Championship, if not ever, in a while anyway. So you have those two clubs stiffing around them. But I think that's a very, very interesting game, because you have a sort of scenario where you could have the underdog slaying the dragon there. So Lockmore Castleiney will have to watch their backs in this one. Toomevara are a very, very good side. They have a lot of history on their side. And obviously, Darragh McCarthy, if you have that youngster in your team, you can achieve anything in the Tipperary Championship. So I think that's a very good game to look forward to. As I did say, Nina Rogue are playing Kilron McDonough's in another quarterfinal in Tip. Nina Rogue have Jay Morris in their team. Sam O'Farrell in their team as well. Kid Rowan are a decent enough Tipperary team that have been in and around that kind of area in the last few years as well. So that should be a very, very interesting game as well. Another interesting quarterfinal, I think, is that's on as well is Drummond and Moycarkey Boris. So Moycarkey Boris, I think, were managed by Eddie Brennan over the last few years and got shockingly to the latter stages of the Tip Championship last season. They were kind of surprise packets. Drummond have Seamus Candon, the great Seamus Candon, in that team. So that's a very, very interesting game to look at there. And the other quarterfinal actually is a quarterfinal of 2 surprise packets in there. So you've Holy Cross Ballycahill, who shocked their group by topping it, and Cashel King Cormac's, who won the intermediate championship last year with the likes of Oisin O'Donoghue in their team. So it is a very, very interesting Tipperary quarterfinal. With Third of Sarsfield gone, there's going to be a very, very interesting winner. And if Lockmore Castleiney lose to Tubavar this weekend, we're going to have a very, very interesting Tipperary championship moving on down the line as well. I'll mention one more championship just because I don't want to steal any of Aaron and Shane's ideas. It is my own county in the Cork Premier Senior Football Championship. So in the quarterfinals, you have Newcestown, the surprise packet in that, after beating Castlehaven. Their reward is playing against Carrigaline in Páirc Uí Rinn this weekend. Interesting enough game. You would expect Newcestown to come through there, especially Carrigaline are without Brian O'Driscoll apparently because of an apparent injury. So I think Newcestown will definitely be favourites for that. Ballincollig are playing Duhallow. You would imagine Ballincollig will win that. I know Duhallow have a good history in the Cork Championship, but they're a divisional side. They've only played 2 games. They don't play games with each other because they're a division. Ballincollig are a club. You would expect Ballincollig to get over the line. But the creme de la creme, the top dollar in the Cork Championship this weekend, you have Castlehaven and St. Finbarrs, the 6th year in a row that these sides will face in the knockout stages. And the first year out of those 6, it's a quarter-final, not a semi. It was a semi over the last few years, but because of Newcestown's win over Castlehaven in the group stage, it's now Castlehaven in the quarter-final against St. Finbarrs. And another interesting kind of angle to this, St. Finbarrs are still in the hurling. They won the hurling last weekend against Emo Kelly, a very good win for them. 3 players in particular were playing on the St. Finbarrs team last weekend, the 3 Callan brothers, and Jack, Connor, and Damien. They're on the Castlehaven team this weekend. So they did get interviewed about that on Clubber. And normally you would think that's an uncomfortable question, but Damien weirdly was just laughing it off. It's almost like he's just used to it at this stage. He plays with the Bars 1 week, then he plays with the Haven, and then vice versa and things like that. But a lot of brilliant players on show in this one. And one big dog, like Castlehaven and St. Finbarrs won't be in the semi-final of the Cork Championship at the same time for the first time since 2019. So that's a long, long time ago. So that's 6 years ago. So that is a very, very interesting game to look at. It could go to extra time, could go to penalties. It's a very, very interesting game there. Obviously, Castlehaven and Michael Hurley, obviously the Callan brothers there. You have Brian Hurley, you have Mark Collins, you have experienced campaigners. They're going for 3 in a row in Cork, which is a very, very hard thing to do as well. The Bars have a certain guy that's flying at the moment, and he's going to be on the Cork team next year, and Stephen Sherlock. He scored 2 goals and 24 points in the Cork Championship so far. He's absolutely flying, and he scored 1 goal and 14 points in 1 game against Carrigaline last time out. So Castlehaven will have to keep their eye on Sherlock. He is on fire at the moment, especially with the new rules. I don't know, did you see on Clubber Lads, there was a clip going around of Sherlock a point against Carrigaline where he scored a 2-pointer from a sideline. So he's that kind of, he's unreal. He really is, and he obviously glad to have him in the Cork panel next year. But like, it's some game to look forward to there, and it's not going to be in the city this time. It's going to be around West Cork. It's going to be in Clonakilty this game. So there's going to be a big crowd at this, a lot of traffic around the place because it is a hotly anticipated encounter, this one. So a big dog will go out of the Cork Championship this weekend, whether that be the Bars or the Haven.
Absolutely. Aaron, which one do you have your eye on?
Yeah, no, look, I think the 4 quarterfinals this weekend in the Dublin Senior Hurling Championship, I think will be very interesting. Like, I think looking at the first one, Kilmuckle Crokes versus Nave Barrack, I think you'd fancy Crokes to come through that fairly comfortably. Vincent's versus Ballybowden is an interesting one. I think Bowden should have enough, I think, to come through. Vincent's. You think so? Yeah, I think it could be 50-50. Yeah, it could be 50-50. Like, it could. I don't know. I haven't seen Bowden being able to come through these games a little bit more over the last couple of years. And some of the players they're obviously stacked with, I think they might just have a little bit more in my opinion. Luke and Sarsfield versus Bridges. I think Bridges have really surprised me this year. I think they've had a very, very good season. But I think Luke and Sarsfield should have enough there. But I think, look, the big one is obviously, of course, Nafina versus Cúilín. Like Cúilín, obviously, where they haven't won a county title, haven't won a Dublin championship since 2020. We know Conor O'Callaghan's obviously in the side. We know the stars that Nafina have within their ranks as well. The likes of Colin Curry and Tom Brennan have been standout players there. Jake Malone's looked very good, I thought, for Cúilín as well. So look, that's going to be the standout game. I think one thing you would say about Cúilín is the fact that obviously you do have Con playing with the footballers as well. There does seem to be a bit more of an emphasis on the footballers at the moment within Cúilín as a collective. But I think it's very, very interesting. I think it's going to be a cracking game. I would fancy Na Fianna to come through, to be honest with you. I think Cúilin's day of probably winning Dublin hurling titles and being dominant in Dublin in terms of hurling anyway is probably gone. So I think Na Fianna would have a good one there. Maybe one game that wasn't mentioned that the lads didn't touch on, Dunshaughlin versus Summerhill in the Meath Senior Football Championship. There's actually some really good players on show. So like Dunshaughlin have the likes of Matthew Costello, Connor Duke, Rory Kinsella, 3 very standout players there. And then Summerhill have Owen Frayne in their ranks as well. So you're talking about, do you know what I mean? Like some all-star nominations all on the one field, and maybe some players who were a little bit unlucky in terms of all-stars as well. And it's also the 2024 winners versus the 23 winners. So that's definitely a cracking game to keep an eye on as well.
Absolutely. I think as well, one that caught my eye over the week, just because it's kind of funny to rub. Liam, you picked Sarsfields to win Munster, didn't you? In Camogie.
Yeah.
Well, they're out.
Oops. Good time St. Catherine's for that game. Good time St. Catherine's for that.
Sorry, I had to.
That's
what you get.
That's
You stole the Fianna Cúilín on me. You stole the Fianna Cúilín on me.
But they were knocked out before this, so like it's not really.
Oh, good. The Camogie semi-finals in Cork, I'm going to keep an eye on because obviously Catherine's now after beating Finbars, they're going to be kept an eye on. But I still think, Catch after beating Sarsfields, but I think you have to look at Finbars defending champions, and they've annihilated everybody in front of them. And then Matthew, you were mentioning there the players that they had, like the Cahillans, like Social McCartan. I don't see anybody stopping them in Cork this year, and I think they'll take some beating then in Munster and beyond. I think Sarsfields from Galway probably, or Dixborough, I think are the ones that can stop them. I don't see Lochgiel or anybody from Ulster stopping them. It'll be really interesting to see how that goes. Then on top of that, I want to give a word to this because I've put my neck on the line for this one. So once again, for the second year in a row, it will be Kilmacud Crokes versus St. Sylvester's in the Dublin LGFA Club Final. And I tipped Stills to shade it this year. So I was at the final last year. It went right down to the wire. Like literally there was nothing between the teams. And this year, Kilmacud don't have Lauren McGee because of her injury. And I think that could have been the grain of rice that tipped it in Crokes' favour last year. But Aaron, without her this year, I think Stills might be able to turn them over.
I'm not too sure though. Like Crokes looked really, really good last night. To be fair, I mean it was a really, really dominant win in fairness over Thomas Davis. So yeah, no, I'd probably still back Crokes to be honest with you to come through it. Like even looking at the likes of Niamh Carter, Amy Conroy, both very, very impressive there from a Kilmacud Crokes perspective. Look, St. Sylvester's will definitely be there. Like they're definitely in the mix. There's no doubt about it. I think the way Clontarf pushed them though to extra time last night as well, coming from I think 5-6 points down going into the closing stages, just from looking at some different reports and stuff. So I would still fancy Crokes from what I've seen, to be honest with you, to still get over the line. I do agree with you though as well. Though I think look, St. Sylvester's will definitely push them and run them quite close, but I'd be still edging Crokes at this moment in time.
Matthew, is there any hope for the underdog, or do you think that Crokes will still be too strong even without Lauren McGee?
I said Crokes from the very start. I'm still sticking with Crokes. But the thing is, like St. Sylvester's have very good history in Dublin LGFA, but at the same time, Clontarf bring up the extra time last night. That probably just epitomises that they might be a bit too far off winning it at this present moment in time, whereas Crokes, I agree with Aaron, absolutely obliterated their opponents at the semi-finals, and they show they mean business. Even without Lauren McGee, they still have some outstanding players. I don't know, is Alva Davern still with them? Niamh Cotter, some very good players there in their team. Obviously, Michelle Davern, Dublin, born and bred there, so which is unusual, obviously, because Davern and Cotter are actually from...
I thought you were going to say unusual for Crokes.
but yeah, it's I think Crokes will be definitely favourites for the Dublin LGFA Championship. But St. Sylvester's, they have proven over the last years they have some talent. They can beat Crokes. It's kind of a situation like the Dublin Men's Football Championship where the only place where Kilmacud could get beaten is the Dublin Championship, not the Leinster Championship. And that's kind of a bad term in many ways, considering you have some good LGFA teams there. We're in Meath at the moment. You have Dunshaughlin, who are going pretty well at the moment. You have Dunboyne in Offaly. I don't know if St. Kieran's in the senior championship, Liam, but they had some decent players over the last few years. Yeah, like Kate Kenny. I don't think she's playing with them this year because of AFLW, is she?
Yeah, I think she's still over in Australia anyways. Yeah, I don't think she's back at the moment.
It's a big loss. It's a really big loss.
They're still going well without her, but she is a big miss for them still.
That would probably just epitomise that they'd probably be a bit off it. So I'd say if any team is going to beat them in Leinster, either Kilmacud or St. Sylvester's, it will be the champions in Meath because they're going pretty well at the moment. And then when you look at the All-Irelands, obviously you have Kilcar and Clonberne in there. So it should be very, very interesting. But St. Sylvester's, it could provide a shock. You never know.
Yeah, no, they could. I just think, having been there at the final last year, right up close on the sideline, literally there was a hair's breadth between it, and it was just Crokes' ability to close the game out. But I think when you look at the fact that, losing a tight final like that, you're forced to go to the well, and either you don't come back and that's the end of your team, and we've seen examples of that in the past, or you come straight back and smash it out of the park next year to win it. We saw, Tipperary in hurling in 2010 came back, tore it up in that final. But we've seen examples too in the past, like Mayo, where they come back and it doesn't happen for them. So it just is a case. Maybe they'll fall short, agonisingly close again. But part of me, it's just maybe Kilmacud will be too strong. I mean, they are one of the best club sides in Ireland, and they have their own unfinished business with winning the All-Ireland itself. I know that they would want nothing more than to beat Kilkerran Clonberne in an All-Ireland club final because of the suffering that they've had due to how good Kilkerran have been over the last 2 years. They're going for 5 in a row, like they've won 4 in a row now. But I do root for the underdog quite a lot, to be honest. And I've seen enough in that final last year with Sills that can tell me that if they get their tactics right and if they perform to the best of their ability and Kilmacud makes some mistakes, then I think Sills can turn them over. But I think you would be a little bit naive to say that Kilmacud aren't favourites. But I just think, do the underdogs have a shot at winning it in this one? I think they absolutely do. So that's my opinion on that. And that brings to an end another show here on Cúilín Media. I was going to say weekend review, but it isn't quite, even though we did spend a lot of time talking about action that had actually happened in the past. But that is another show wrapped up here on Cúilín Media. Peter says, great show, lads. Thanks a mil. See ye Sunday evening. We will indeed. We will see you on Sunday at 8 p.m. live for a weekend review show where we'll be talking about all of the action that took place on the Friday, the Saturday, and the Sunday across the club championships. Keep an eye out for the Gaelic Stats on Instagram page and the Cúilín Media Instagram page. Matthew, if you have those results handy there again. But until then, until Sunday's episode, Torah.
Follow your instinct, baby. Follow your instinct.